outside factors affect how you get to the draft and what you have to do. And if you don't have a first-round pick, it's real hard to get a quarterback. Let's get into it today about the Dolphins, what's going on in Los Angeles with both the Chargers and that other team, that just won a Super Bowl. Our Rob Rang is there. Welcome to Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back Eric Crocker, and of course, I'm joined by my co-host Ryan Tracy with Rogue Analytics, and we got Rob Rang, CFL scout Rob Rang for the BC Lions, also covers Seattle Seahawks for the Locked On Network as well. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day, and also let you know that today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide, and they have a special offer for all of our listeners. Get 10% off of your first month at BetterHelp.com/locked on. All right, y'all. So some news kind of got really dropped down like a hammer. And the crazy thing is, I think for 24 hours, I had no idea about it. I think everyone was so up in arms about the Deshaun Watson situation that the Miami Dolphins losing a first-round pick just kind of slipped through the crack a little bit. But the Miami Dolphins, they lose a first-round pick. And this is a team who, they got a new head coach. They added a ton of help to this roster, but they're kind of building around Tua, but they're kind of not. And they had 2 first-round picks because they got that last one from the 49ers, but now they've gotten one taken away, still got one. What does this do to this team? Rob, we're going to go to you first.
Well, as you said, Croc, it just was like a hammer dropping down. I think that if you are the Miami Dolphins, you have the owner, Stephen Ross, obviously very competitive situation, trying to turn Miami into a winner there in South Beach. And it sounds like that broke some rules, some tampering as ruled by the NFL with Sean Payton and certainly with Tom Brady as well. So the NFL ruled that the Miami Dolphins are not going to have their own 2023 first-round pick. As you mentioned, Eric, the Dolphins still possess the 49ers first-round pick. So they still have a first-round selection.
And that's slated to be probably a pick 32 overall, but go ahead.
31 overall in this case if they were to win it all. Yes, you're right. Because again, there's only going to be 31 first-round picks. But yeah, I do, and I think most expect San Francisco to have a pretty strong record this season. It's very possible that Miami would have had a very strong record this season. Obviously, you bring in the wide receiver in Tyreek Hill, and he made some splashy moves the last couple of years in the draft and in free agency. Miami Dolphins are a solid squad. But at the same time, to lose a first-round pick as well as a third-round pick in the 2024 draft. The last time we saw anything similar to this in terms of just the amount of penalties levied on a team was also in the AFC West with Deflategate and the New England Patriots. And they lost, I believe it was a first and a fourth-round pick. And obviously the New England Patriots still have done well for themselves. But Miami has kind of dug themselves into a bit of a hole here. You have a lot of talent in Miami, but now all of the pressure's got to be on Tua. And if he does stumble this upcoming season, Miami would have been one of five teams that had multiple first-round picks. The others being Detroit, Houston, Seattle, and Philadelphia. And I really wonder if, just knowing how aggressive Miami has been, if they would have been one of those clubs that if they were unsuccessful this upcoming season and decided that they did want to take advantage of a quarterback class that we've all talked about, we're really excited about, now they don't have that possibility. So I think it puts an awful lot of pressure on Tua. I think it puts an awful lot of pressure on the Miami Dolphins, and it completely rearranges kind of the pecking order of who is in position to do something in the 2022 NFL draft.
I never thought I'd say
Ryan, real quick. I think I forgot to mention what they're getting penalized for, right? And it's the tampering with Tom Brady, Sean Payton. So what exactly were they trying to do there with Sean Payton and Tom Brady? Ryan, I want to hear kind of your thoughts on that.
That's a great tie-in because you have a first-year head coach, right? Were you trying to recruit someone that maybe was already attached? And there are some rules against that. It's frowned upon in a serious way, as you can tell from these penalties. I'm not gonna go down that road because there's a lot more dirt that you can dig up once you start digging, and I'm not digging. Miami fans, you're welcome. But I'll tell you what my instant thought process went to, and the guy whose job never thought that I would say this. There's one GM job in this league that I don't want, and it's Chris Greer's, because the pressure on him is immense. This is the kind of thing, not only having Tua that is a young quarterback, but having to make that decision in the first place, whether you're going to go draft in the first round, another quarterback, was already enough pressure. Now that you don't have it, the evaluation you make in the next 17 games max, if Tua plays them all, maybe less than that, is what your young career as a GM is going to ride on. You have a new head coach, maybe, a trend bucker right there that maybe gives you a little bit more variation in what you can expect or how you can evaluate your quarterback. And then it's the rest of his staff. And there's one name in here that I think is going to be important. And it's not just Chris Greer, it's the whole staff. But Reggie McKenzie has seen a lot of quarterbacks and a lot of good ones. And he's going to be a guy that Chris Greer is going to have to lean on in this evaluation, because it's not just how the ball comes off his hand. It's not just how he reads the defense pre-snap. It is your call of Tua as a man, as a leader, as a franchise cornerstone. And I think he has to rely on some of the older, more experienced guys in the room. That's still a ton of pressure. This is going to swing this franchise, I think, for multiple years on whatever the decision is after not having the ability to go get another young quarterback.
And I think, if they were to go out and try to get a young quarterback, what quarterback do you think fits that? I don't know. I've been really high, and we just had a whole segment about quarterbacks, and I was like, Will Levis, really like him. And you look at the offense Will Levis plays in at Kentucky. You look at the offense he's going to continue to play in with now offensive coordinator at Kentucky, Rich Scangarillo, and Scangarillo tied in with Mike McDaniel. Very similar offense. They've coached together for some years. That could be very interesting to see if that's a quarterback they might even try to move up from, depending on what they get or the situation with Tua. When we come back, we're going to keep talking about another quarterback, one that plays in Los Angeles, has this long, pretty hair, big quarterback, mobile, strong arm, all that good stuff. We're going to get on him next. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about Built Bar. And if you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor in town, y'all. Are you ready? It's delicious. Indulge yourself into a cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite, cookie dough chunk puff. And it has a light and chewy texture. They got real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All of the joys of eating a cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it is very healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they are a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Go to Built.com right now and snag a box for you or your family. And, it'll be the perfect treat. Or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard it for yourself. That's typically what I do. All right. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough puff is covered with 100% real chocolate. That means they are healthy and tasty, and, of course, covered in chocolate cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture in there. So good. You're going to love this new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or you just want to grab a quick bite to eat when you're on the run. Built is the perfect protein bar for you, and they taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, ditch the fat, ditch the sugar, and go grab yourself a Built Bar. Go to Built.com right now. Use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off of your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. We want to thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day, and continue to talk about some of these topics around not just the NFL, college football, all that good stuff right here. But we're staying in the NFL. And Rob, you've had the pleasure to be around the LA Chargers and the LA Rams. But let's start with the LA Chargers. And we'll get to some of their young prospects and whatnot, but I think nobody's more important than that big quarterback that they have in the backfield. So what did it look like kind of watching him up close and personal at practice?
It's always a joy to watch Justin Herbert throw. I mean, because he is as, just physically blessed as it gets the quarterback position. If you were going to drop a guy on the whiteboard about this is what you want a quarterback to look like, it might just be Justin Herbert in terms of his height, in terms of his arm, in terms of his athletic ability, in terms of just who he is as a person. Kind of a quiet leader, but at the same time has the respect of his teammates. I had the opportunity to scout him in person a couple of times, University of Oregon. They were kind enough to let me into their facility, kind of get a peek behind the scenes a couple of years, prior to him being drafted, of course, by the Chargers. And then, as you mentioned, Eric, I'm here in Los Angeles to scout for the BC Lions. And so the majority of my time, I am focusing on players who are not, all pro kind of caliber players, the way that I think that Justin Herbert is. But at the same time, I'm not blind, gentlemen. You can't help but see some of the great throws that Justin Herbert has demonstrated. And I think that it's especially exciting because you look at the way that the Chargers are kind of building this team around him. You have the defensive-minded head coach, of course, in Brandon Staley, and we saw some of the improvements by that club a year ago defensively. But when you think about their offense, the fact that they used their first-round selection 2 years ago on Rashawn Slater, and he had a spectacular rookie season a year ago. Then you follow that up with their first round selection this year, the big guard Zion Johnson from Boston College. He had played left guard and center at BC, but he is sliding into that right guard position and doing very, very well in LA, at least during the training camp practices that I've been able to witness. And I really like some of the free agent moves that this club made on the defensive side of the ball as well. I think the Chargers are a team that really is, kind of one of the unsung stories, really, the AFC West. Everybody focuses on the quarterback, on the quarterbacks in the AFC West, and that's for obvious reasons. But I think the Chargers, top to bottom, are one of the best rosters in all of the league, and one of the reasons why I think that they are very much a storyline that we're going to be talking about an awful lot this year.
I have a question for you, Rod, just because of your experience. I wasn't able to make it to Mobile the year Justin Herbert was there, and after having seen him in Oregon, seen him go through that, and I just watched his film, was happy with him. I was quite a bit higher on him than anybody else was, and there was this question about, is he mature enough? Can he lead people? Is he going to be able to grow into that? So you've been able to see it a little bit from the bookend, and even though you're not there to focus on him, do you see a difference from the kid you saw either at Oregon or at that Senior Bowl versus how he is now in front of grown men leading this team?
I don't know if I have seen much of a difference. I think that it's always been pretty solid in that regard. He's just not a flashy guy. He's not a look at me the way that a lot of quarterbacks are. There was a moment just today in practice that I watched. It was 20 minutes after practice had officially ended. And there's a few players who are, right on the roster bubble, who are, continuing to work out with their coaches and things like that. And then you see Justin Herbert out there. He picks up this huge duffel bag of footballs and pads and things. I mean, it's like he was like an intern, as a coaching assistant. And there's just not many franchise quarterbacks that you see lugging around big bags like that. And stuff like that. He does stay after practice. He is that first guy on the field, last guy off, kind of all of those stereotypes that you like to talk about, but you just rarely see quarterbacks who actually do that. And I was one of those who had some questions about how well he'd be able to acclimate to a big market. This young man, as I mentioned before, watched him in Eugene, and Eugene is a tiny little beautiful college town. But at the same time, it is very much a small market. And then to come originally to San Diego and then obviously the Los Angeles Chargers, I did have my questions about whether or not he would have that outgoing personality that you want. But I think that just watching his teammates, the Chargers have plenty of personalities, but no one speaks softly, but also carries more weight with their words than Justin Herbert. And I think that's exactly what you want from a young quarterback. He has not won a championship yet. Obviously. And so I think that it's important for him to let his actions kind of speak for themselves. And that's kind of been his strategy the entire time. So I have been impressed by his maturity, his intelligence, all those things I don't think have ever been an issue. I just wondered if he really was the raw ride type of guy that sometimes NFL teams need. But if you're if you're good enough, you could be mute out there and still be just fine. And Justin Herbert is far from mute, and he absolutely is an incredibly talented player.
Yeah, I think his talent has been on display ever since he stepped on the field. Big time talent. Smart of him, right? Stay for his senior year. A lot of people kind of questioned that, but so far it looks like it made him a little bit more prepared to get into the NFL and be the best version of himself he can be. And that indeed is what we have seen. When we come back, we're going to talk to you a little bit about what's going on the other side of LA, those Rams, and some young players that they have that we should be talking about, or maybe the BC Lions are like, maybe we can snag some of these guys. But first, we're going to talk to you about our good friends over at BetterHelp. And, life is full of twists and turns, and it's important to show up for yourself and, be there for yourself throughout it all. BetterHelp Online Therapy will assess your needs and can watch you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. We've all had times where you need to talk to someone, and whether it's you personally or maybe someone that you know. With me, it was my wife going through a really tough time, and I wish we would have known about something like BetterHelp. All right, it's not a crisis line. It's not a self-help. It's a professional therapy done securely online, available for people worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. You can also schedule weekly video phone sessions. You don't have to be there on camera if you're not comfortable with doing that. They'll get you in there. Therapy every week is as easy as a few clicks on your laptop or your phone. All right, it's more affordable than your traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available as well. BetterHelp is a great way to invest in yourself and your mental. All right, visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily. All right, in fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional therapists in all 50 states. There's so many people being drawn to this. They need more help because that's how good it is. And they have a special offer for all of our listeners in the Locked On Network. You get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. All right, so make sure you add that Locked On to the end there. That's 10% off of your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. So, Rob, let's talk about those guys on the other side of Los Angeles over there in Inglewood. All right, you got the Los Angeles Rams and a team coming off on that high horse a little bit, right? You got Super Bowl, but this is a team that also has traded away a lot of draft picks. They've had to draft well in the mid-rounds. When you go out there and you look at that young crop of players that they have, they're really going to count on to have another big season. Who'd you see that flashed out there for them?
Well, as you said, Crock, I mean, this is the club that has traded away so many of their early draft picks, and they've gone with the veteran players. And so it's kind of like going to see the Chargers. I mean, my job is not to focus in on Justin Herbert, but he's just so darn good that when you see Justin Herbert, you see Keenan Allen, you see Joey Bosa, then how do you not watch them? Well, same kind of thing here with the gotta say it, Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams. I mean, you see Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. The list just goes on and on and on. How do you not focus in on those guys? Didn't have a first-round pick, didn't have a second-round pick this past season due to some of those trades. But to your point, Croc, if you're going to do that, then you have to hit on those middle-round picks. And the Los Angeles Rams' top selection this year was in the third round, Logan Bruss, a guard from Wisconsin. And guys, he looks like a plug-and-play starter for them. I was really impressed by just his physicality, his quickness. You think of Wisconsin, you think of those, run downhill type of teams, not necessarily going to pass the ball the way that Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford want to pass the ball, but Bruss looks fantastic. And so that to me is, I know it's not the sexiest position, offensive guard, but you obviously got to be able to protect the quarterback, and Bruss can do that. I think it also an interesting kind of development at the running back position. That was one of the things I was kind of focusing in on a little bit. Not that I necessarily think any of these backs are going to be somebody that is going to be available to us in the CFL. But at the same time, to see Cam Akers return from his injury, to see Darrell Henderson, who stepped up in Akers' absence, and then the rookie running back from Notre Dame, Kyron Williams. Williams has not yet been taken off the PUP list, or at least he wasn't a couple of days ago when I was there in person at practice. He was working out on the side, but it was interesting to see the way that the Rams were rotating both Akers and Henderson especially. This did not feel like there was going to be one back taking over. And so because we're talking about two day two backs here in Henderson and in Akers, I thought that was a kind of interesting development and just kind of speaks to the talent and depth that the Rams possess.
I like Jake Funk too. I wanted to see how he was doing, but I haven't seen a whole lot of pub on him. One guy that stands out to me is also on the pup, unfortunately, but I think because of their philosophy, two things stood out to me is that they did very well when they did get to select. It's funny that Logan Bruss, as well as AJ Arcuri, they both stood out to me and got on my board on the same game watching those guys. And two Big Ten sluggers and that kind of style, like you can see where they want to help protect the run game. They want to protect Stafford. That makes sense. So it was just funny that they chose the two guys that kind of popped on film to me at the same time. But the other one is from right there in town in Quentin Lake. And I'm interested to see what happens to him when he gets off the pup. He was a guy that I thought had a lot of upside and didn't perform that well testing-wise. So I thought maybe when he got into camp, if he had a chance. Didn't have that yet. So maybe that's somebody that, everybody up north in CFL might want to be paying attention to in case he can't make this roster.
Any relationship with him to Carnell Lake? Because I saw in college he wore number 37 at UCLA. I never looked into it. I just assumed like maybe there's some kind of tie in there. So
yeah, I believe it's the son of Carnell Lake. Pittsburgh Steelers, great player. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm a big fan of Quentin Lake. I had an opportunity to evaluate him in person at the East West Shrine Bowl in Las Vegas, and the same type of skills that I saw from this version of Quentin Lake, the young player, that I saw at UCLA, his ability to play both safety spots, drop down and play that nickel corner position as well, and do it well. Plays faster than he timed in that pro day workout that Ron just mentioned. I really am intrigued by him. As you mentioned, he's on the PUP list. I think he was a hamstring or a groin, something soft tissue, not that big of a deal. Did see him running around a little bit. I'm really intrigued by him, though, because I just look at the NFC West, like most divisions in football, but it's all about the passing game. But the NFC West 2 years ago, guys, every team in the NFC West took a wide receiver in the first or second round that was kind of these quick twitch kind of guys. The Rams, for example, took Tutu Atwell. And that's the thing is that I think that you have to cover those slot receivers, especially in the NFC West, where you have this kind of arms race outside of Seattle and all that kind of stuff. And I think that was one of the things that the Rams really did a great job of. It's kind of identifying where the game is going and making sure they get some players that kind of fit in with what they do. So it kind of goes back to Ryan's point before about the two Big Ten offensive linemen. I mean, who throws the football around as much as the Pac-12? And again, just acknowledging what is going on in your league and how to stay on top. So to me, I'm excited about the Rams draft class. Even though they didn't have those first couple of picks, it does look like they have done a great job of building up this roster yet again.
Hey, Rob, before we get out of here, I have one more question for you. And I know you've been traveling and you've been scouting and doing your thing with BC, but any update on the quarterback situation with the Seattle Seahawks?
Well, the biggest thing is what we've talked about already, guys, that I personally believe, and from what I've seen, kind of also just gives me that much more confidence in saying that Drew Lock is ultimately going to wind up winning this job. He is the more accurate of Seattle's passers. Geno Smith is the more experienced, but at the same time, he is just often when I've watched Geno Smith throw passes in training camp and in previous years, he has what I call ballpark accuracy. It's in the ballpark. His receivers can catch it. It's just that their ability to make plays after the catch, yards after the catch, is limited. And when you have the receiver talent that the Seahawks have, and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and D. Eskridge, another one of those early picks, as I mentioned before, the slot receivers, it's critical that you hit your receivers in stride, allow them to take advantage of that. Drew Lock threw an interception today or during Wednesday's practice, I should say, and that was his first interception camp so far. Geno Smith has 4 or 5 of them. And so that to me is the biggest thing. And now I will say this, Geno Smith has been operating with the ones almost exclusively and going up against the number one defense as well almost exclusively. Drew Lock is working with the twos and going up against the twos. He had better be, throwing the ball better than Geno Smith at this point. But at the same time, I do think that that Geno Smith is kind of, what he is, and I think the Seahawks are intrigued by him. The one wild card I would kind of throw into this is the fact that Pete Carroll is out. He's been out the last couple of days. He tested positive for COVID. And not that Pete Carroll is a control freak. Let's face it, all head coaches are a little bit of a control freak. But I just I wonder if Seattle is going to really turn the keys over to Locke while Carroll is out. I think that you're going to continue to see Geno Smith get the number one reps, and then you're going to see Drew Lock start to sneak and steal some of those reps with the number ones once we get more into the preseason games and that kind of stuff.
All right, that's a situation I think a lot of people are watching, especially people over in San Francisco, depending on what happens with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's been seen on the field throwing around, and it seems like he's heading towards being fully healthy. But anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On NFL Draft. I want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, each host on here is a part of another show. You got Ryan Tracy with the Chiefs, Locked On Chiefs. You got Rob Rang, Locked On Seahawks. And, of course, myself with my co-host Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers. All right, but until next time, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.